Michael, you said that Brentford had that bit of extra quality. What do you expect from Swansea, who are pushing for promotion and also are smarting from a defeat at the weekend?
Yeah, look, they're a very good side. They've been in the top, not even the top six, probably the top four basically for the whole season, and at times have obviously been in the top two. So they're a good team. I think they have a couple of games in hand, so they're going to come into a busy period as well because they'll have to make those games up. But I think they've been a good side. Obviously, they made this playoffs last season, and they've added to that this year. I think we look back at the game at Cardiff or Swansea rather, sorry, and we had to shuffle our team a little bit that night, and we didn't perform particularly well. And so we want to obviously address that. We won the game here last season 2-0. And, we'll be hoping for something similar again tomorrow night.
You can send out a message to the rest of the teams in the league with 2 home games and hopefully 2 wins. And even if that isn't going to be enough, it can certainly keep you on the periphery and keep the players ticking over, can't it?
Yeah, I think, I think the most important thing for us is to, regain that little bit of confidence that, winning brings, that, gives you another chance. You're in this league, all teams are the same. You're continually trying to get on a run of wins, and it's very difficult to do. So we've lost the last 2 games. The next game always gives you the chance to start a winning run, and that's how we have to look at it rather than anything else. The league table's not really that important to us at this minute in time. We have to focus just on ourselves and try and amass as many points as we can in the remaining 13 games. And we'll only do that by winning the next game.
You've talked about the fine lines and perhaps not having enough quality, but the injuries can't have helped. What's the injury situation after Saturday?
Well, it hasn't been added to, thankfully. Obviously the players that we've previously mentioned remain out, and Stephen Fletcher trained today. We hopefully won't have a reaction, and will be fine to be considered tomorrow night. Rabbi Matondo is still training with the fitness team, but we hope that he'll be able to train on Thursday, so he won't be available for tomorrow night. So Stephen will be the only one really returning to the squad.
How's Alfie Doughty progressing?
Good, yeah, very good. He's done an awful lot of work. We knew when we signed Alfie that we were signing him really for next season. He was had a bad injury. There's no doubt about that for a young player, and had to undergo surgery on his hamstring. But I see him out now. He's working every day on the grass now with the fitness team. Looks like he's running close to full speed. So that might give us the chance to integrate him before the end of the season. But it's the delicate one. We can't rush that one, and we have to make sure Alfie was a long-term signing, and we don't want to set him back by putting any unrealistic expectations on when we get the chance to introduce him to play.
Are you finding it difficult to freshen up the team with the amount of injuries you've had?
Yeah, of course it is. It's not easy. The players that we have out at the minute, obviously, Klukas, McLean, Fox. There's just 3 examples of players that we would expect play a lot of games for us. And right through, we've had that little bit of a challenge this season with players coming unavailable. Nathan Collins comes into that category as well. Players that have played a lot of games. And that's, the injuries, unfortunately, when the window closed, we had essentially a full bill of health, which was nice. But within about, a week to 10 days of the window closing, we started to then, injuries started to occur again. So that's the nature of it. I think it's something that all the clubs are dealing with. But certainly it's made it a little bit more difficult, right, as you rightly say, to shuffle the pack. It's probably made this a little bit difficult in games where we've had to make substitutions, and possibly we may not have been as strong for having to make those substitutions as well. And they're all factors in winning games.
You made a point in the January transfer window of getting people with pace in. You've mentioned Alfie isn't going to be available this season, and Rabbi Matondo's obviously been injured. What does Jack Clark need to do to get into the starting 11 again?
Jack, again, he's a young player that we brought to the club, and He's been involved in every game, essentially. If you look at it, and he came out of the team after Norwich, and the team won the next 2 games, so he had to be patient. And he came into both those games off the bench. And then in terms of Saturday's game, we changed the system, which doesn't suit a wide player, so that was tactical. Jack, we're pleased with what Jack's contribution has been. There's areas he knows he has to improve on still, but he's a very talented young player. This is really, in terms of being out on loan, he's played more minutes here than he has done on previous loans. So I think he's still adapting a little bit. But he's a young player that we have we're looking at between now and the end of the season to have an impact. Because equally, you'd like to think that that's maybe a situation we could revisit next year on a longer term basis. But Jack has to just be patient, and when he gets the opportunity to play, obviously he has to make sure that he does enough to either stay in the team or force me to start him in the next game.
You stated that you wanted to be around the top 6 and you wanted to have a chance to challenge after the new year, and there's obviously been a marked improvement in the way the players have played, and you've got younger players in the team. How far off do you think this squad is from where you really want it to be?
That's a good way away from where we would like it to be honest, because it's, we're trying to build a team, but at the same time, we're obviously trying to dismantle a team because we have, 12 players out on loan, which doesn't make the situation any easier. And those are the challenges at this minute in time. But I think we've taken steps in the right direction. The transfer windows are frustrating because in terms of transition, that's the only opportunity you have in terms of evolving the squad from a personnel point of view. The squad's always evolving, you hope, from a training point of view and a coaching point of view, what you're putting into the team all the time. But yeah, look, I do think at this minute in time, our team can sometimes look for this league can look quite young, and then we have older players as well who've given us a lot this season. But we have a little bit of a gap in the middle, and to get the squad where we'd ideally like it to be, we probably don't have enough players in the sort of 23 to 27 age bracket who are real starting players that can push and improve your team. And those are areas that we would ideally like to improve in the squad. It's not easy because typically those players cost money because generally they're under contract, and because of that, at this minute in time, they've been unavailable to us.
And finally, from me, obviously that you've got so many players out on loan, and the likelihood, given the current pandemic and the economic circumstances in football, it's looking likely that maybe most of those will come back next season, and you'll have to start the musical chairs again.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is. Players, you don't see them for a year or a season. Sometimes longer, and then they're back and they're a contracted player at the club. But I think when you go out on loan as a senior player, as opposed to a development loan like the likes of Harry Souttar, for example, very rarely do those players come back and have kickstart their career back at their original club. That doesn't happen very often. I was in that position myself as a player, so I've been through that. And look, we have a number of those players who have another year, sometimes some longer on their contracts to go. So we just have to, we have to get through that. We have to work our way through that. We have to find the best solution for the club, and the player has to find the best solution for himself. But that's the situation as it stands at this minute in time, and we just got to continue to look improve the squad as much as we can, given those restrictions. But overall, I think it's good at times to see the younger players starting games. There wasn't many young players starting games, when I came to the club. We have to continue to build on that, because ultimately they will become, hopefully, the building blocks of a team that can ultimately challenge for promotion.
Thank you, Michael. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. George now, please.
Michael, thanks for joining us. And obviously, continuity has never been something that you could utilise very much so far this season, isn't it, really? And that's been a pain for you, hasn't it, really? Because you've got to juggle the pack every game, as it seems.
Yeah, look, it's the nature of the shortened season means that you have to manage your squad. But I suppose when you have injuries, as we have at this minute in time, that makes that a little bit more difficult. And obviously, the more you play players regularly, the higher risk of injury in a season where they're playing basically nearly every midweek. So, that's the consequence of the season. We're not the only club suffering from this, but certainly at this minute in time, given that we allowed players to go out on loan in January, and at that time we had a full bill of health. Unfortunately, we've picked up one or two injuries since then that has just made us maybe a little bit threadbare at times. But we'll be fine. We'll get through that, and hopefully those players who are out will get back to fitness and back to playing soon.
You've introduced a lot of young players into the system, and I suppose really the temptation is maybe to even use them more as we come towards the last quarter of the season, Michael. But you've still got an opportunity to accrue a lot of points, as you've already alluded to. So you've got to use the more experienced players, I would imagine, Michael. That's in your mind, isn't it?
Look, the bottom line is there's a balance between introducing young players into the team and winning games. Our priority is to win games, and that hasn't changed since day one. We're not putting the young players in there just for the benefit of it. We're putting them in because we believe they're ready to play. They have to then show that they're ready to play and stay in the team. Some have done that better than others, and have showed a lot of promise in this season. And that's a continued process that we'll have to go through. Even some of the younger players that we brought to this club, like Jacob. What we do have is we've good senior professionals, players that have been at a really good level around them, and that helps them. I look at John Obi and Joe and James Chester, Stephen Fletcher, for example, Danny Batt. They're all top professionals and top lads for young lads to be around, and that has given us the confidence to introduce the young players when we see it. And as I say, hopefully they'll be better for the experience, but we're doing it on the basis that we hope longer term it will help us build, as I say, a strong team that can challenge for promotion.
Swansea suffered a setback, but they're right in the pack, Michael. You've already alluded to with the games in hand. Nobody can write them off, but they'll come there. They'll be smarting after the defeat on Saturday, won't they?
Yeah, I think like any team, when you lose in this league, you have to try and get back and on track as quickly as possible. Swansea haven't lost many games this season. They've been very good in terms of the number of goals that they've conceded. A number of goals, but they were maybe 6 places ahead of us in the league predominantly was because they had conceded less. So they've been very good, defensively, I think, as well. They've stuck with their system, and I think again they've built on having the experience and the confidence of finishing the top 6 last season. But it's a game that we know we're capable of winning. We'll have to put on a very good performance to do so. But, as I say, we need to win every bit as much as they do.
And certainly they're the type of side that do have the ability to counter-attack, and that's what they utilise well. Or they do like to play from the back, don't they? Yeah,
they've, stuck to the principles of trying to build the game from the back. They've, brought players in, specifically their loan players, give them that. They've looked for that in the players they've recruited, particularly in the goalkeeper as well. And they look to play from the back. So, we have to try and counteract that by making it difficult for them. We did that very well in the game against Brentford, particularly in the first half, another team that, want to build the game. So, in the first half, Brentford found it very difficult to play out and get through us. And ultimately in the second half, they went a lot longer, and, that the game became stretched. And that's how ultimately, they got themselves back in the game. So, look, we know the opposition well, as all the teams in this league are very familiar with each other. So Swansea will come, and I don't envisage they'll change too much. They've got a very good front two, and Jamal Lowe and Jordan Ayew, and we just have to be ready to deal with that.
Finally, from me, Michael, any progress report on how Tyrese is moving in terms of, I know it's going to be a long time, but how's the progress report on Tyrese?
Yeah, look, it's as we said right at the outset, it is a long-term injury. So Ty is at this minute in time, I see him doing some work on the exercise bike. He's working very hard with the medical team here. He got and he's working very closely with the surgeon that performed the operation. But people have to be realistic and realize that this injury is going to take time. And it's not a question that hopefully I'm not going to be asked in the coming months that how close is he to playing, because that's not something that is imminent. And as I say, we don't have a target for when Ty returns. I'm sure he has a target in his mind as well, but we just got to continue to with his rehabilitation. He's working extremely hard, and it's a difficult place for a young player to be. But as I say, he's got good staff around him. And as I say, he's making good progress.
Thanks for joining us, Michael. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Dave, anything from you, please?
Yeah, a couple of questions. You've spoken quite a lot about the injuries that have hit Stoke in recent weeks. How much do you think the COVID restrictions have affected your ability to keep the players fit and to keep them free from injury?
Oh. Well, I have spoken quite a bit, but I only speak about the injuries because you asked me about them predominantly. So I don't just come out and start speaking about them. I generally have to answer a question regarding them. So in that side of things, I don't think COVID has played a part in the injuries, really. It's played a part in terms of how we've operated here as a club, and no club's different. I think we've dealt with that extremely well. But, the injuries we have are not... We've had one or two COVID cases, which means obviously we've had either positive tests or we've had players who have had to self-isolate because possibly a family member has had a positive test. And that's essentially been a 2-week absence, pretty much. And a 2-week absence in the season we're in has led to 4 games, sometimes 3 games. And that's what we've had to deal with, which is COVID related. But it hasn't affected us in relation to the injuries. The injuries we've had have predominantly happened in games as well. So, you look at Nathan Collins' injury. That's more Morgan Fox as an example of that. Tyrese's injury, Stephen Fletcher's injuries. They were all injuries that happened in games. The training time for the team is quite minimal. So we've not had that many injuries that have happened in training. 1 or 2 of the injuries, Sam Lucas is obviously a double hernia. That's an ongoing injury that happens over time. And James McLean has a foot injury, which is, he's played with. And obviously it's got to a point where, the pain management of it is difficult. So he's had to obviously step out, and we've had to then, inject it and hopefully find a long-term solution to that. But I wouldn't say that the COVID has had any real influence on any of that.
And the other question I was going to ask was, you've got an 8:15 kickoff tomorrow. Other clubs like Norwich, I think it's 5:30, others are 7. I would argue that you're probably not as happy as you could have been with that. It means the players will be to bed late. It rolls on because you've got a game on Saturday, important game on Saturday. Is that right?
It would be if we were away from home. I think it's more difficult for Swansea because 8:15 they'll probably get back into Swansea in the early hours of the morning. They'll travel back on 2 coaches. So no, I don't think that's in terms of you're talking an hour or 2 in terms of recovery between Saturday, and I think if you're going to have a late kickoff, it's not a major problem for us because we're at home again on Saturday. The more difficult situation is last week, for example, we played at Barnsley and then we had to get back and we had to travel Friday, and all of those types of situations are more demanding when you play Wednesday, Saturday. So I don't think so. Certainly if we don't perform on Saturday, I won't be using the kickoff time as any excuse for that.